The middle class families, the working families of Washington, have lived through the earlier packages that we've heard discussed here in this conversation. They've seen the gas tax they pay go up and up and up. They've seen the cost to renew their tabs on their vehicles every year go up and up and up. Mr. Speaker, I think that's why we see the people of Washington so often support easy solutions like $30 car tabs, because they have this feeling that they're working hard, they're struggling to make ends meet, and it's no one thing that gets them, but it's this cumulative effect of a nickel and a dime and a nickel and a dime that makes it impossible to have even a $900 car, that makes it impossible to live what most of them consider a normal middle-class life. Mr. Speaker, this package, this bill we're considering, this is part of that nickel and diming. We have to stop this, Mr. Speaker. We can't do this to the people of Washington who are working so hard to make ends meet, who have suffered through the last 2 years, many times being laid off from their jobs or put on a lower work rotation. We have to do more for them, and this doesn't do it, Mr. Speaker. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I've got to say that the way that this policy was conceived, with little input from all sides.
If the good member could keep the remarks directed at the policy, please proceed.
The way the policy constructed with little input from all sides makes it vulnerable to the kind of challenges that we've seen in other public policies in the courts lately. So let's put this aside, let's find a more collaborative approach, and let's do better by the working families in Washington.
I'm a pretty resounding no, Mr. Speaker. There's a couple reasons for that, substantive reasons I'll get to in a second, but I think understanding those substantive reasons requires understanding the process that gave rise to those substantive reasons. And the process, Mr. Speaker, has been fundamentally flawed on this bill. We heard from the gentleman from the 47th District on a previous amendment that there were negotiations revolving how much operating budget revenue to send into this budget since before session began. But Mr. Speaker, I, as the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, wasn't invited into those discussions. To my knowledge.
Speak to the merits of the policy. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are several demerits to the policy, and I think the flaws with the policy, such as the fact that it relies on revenue sources not supported by our cities, by making them choose between infrastructure and roads, by taking money from the Public Works Trust Fund, by not creating a bill that even our state's business community can support. They were instrumental to its passage in 2015. They know better than anybody just how important a revenue package is, a transportation package is to the state's economy. But to my knowledge, no major business group is supporting the policy that's before us today. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think the reason for these substantive flaws is the process that created the bill.
We have a policy that seems to be pretty one-sided, developed by one party, constructing projects mostly on one side.
Please do not impugn the motives of members and speak to the policy. Please proceed.
The policy was developed mostly by one party, builds projects mostly on one side of the state, and is opposed by those very same people that called us begging for it last time around. When we pass this bill out, the Public Works Trust Fund is going to be a big deal. And I'm getting calls from those same mayors, those same county administrators, those same business lobbyists saying, Brandon, vote no. We need a bill that has consensus. We need a bill that is good for all of Washington. We need a bill that is good for everyone involved. And while I applaud the fact that it doesn't have a gas tax, there are so many more things that it does have that we have to be a no today.
And I think the most important part of this whole package that really concerns me is the Public Works Trust Fund. Every one of my colleagues have brought that up today. And if you've lived without the Public Works Trust Fund, like I did as the mayor for the city of Sultan, you would understand how important that fund is for the sake of the utilities and the water and the sewer. You know, we have 281 cities, and 260 of them all use this.
Mr. Speaker, I want to like this bill, but it doesn't spread the peanut butter throughout the state of Washington. It's very focused, Mr. Speaker, on multimodal and other things that aren't maintaining our roads, aren't maintaining our transportation systems, and they simply don't support the state as a whole.
I think there's a lot more work that we could and should do. This package should be put down. All the members of the Four Corners should get together, sit down, and work through something that doesn't have the negative impacts that this will have. My constituents, when they lose the Public Works Assistance account, they're going to pay more in utility bills too, along with $125 a year per person that they're paying for the package. Please vote no.
Mr. Speaker, we've only listened to one side on this policy. Mr. Speaker, many of the priorities that have been laid out before us tonight on this policy reflect only one side. See, Mr. Speaker, we started on a journey a couple of years ago when the discussion came before us about a transportation package. Now, we know the problem statement. We know it well. We know we need revenue. We know our transportation system is in dire straits. We know we have projects. Mr. Speaker, we need to finish what we've started. We haven't even finished the last package that was just done a few short years ago, 6 years ago. But Mr. Speaker, instead of getting together, both sides of the aisle, all of us, working on a...
Please speak directly to the policy and not to the process. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the process is part of the policy, if I may, Mr. Speaker. We have to talk about how we went about putting this together. This policy in front of us tonight, Mr. Speaker, is a very big transportation revenue package. It's full of taxes and fees. It's full of things that we've debated tonight, that we've talked about, that we agree and disagree on. We put forth amendments tonight on this policy, many good ideas to show a different path, ideas that could have been discussed if we were together at the beginning. Mr. Speaker, the good gentleman of the 27th went out in the state and talked to many people, but the problem is he did it on his own. Mr. Speaker, this is not the right way to do transportation for Washington State now or in the future.